In this video, we want to look at generating randomly created fractions in MyOpenMath. To do that, we could create two variables, a and b, which will become the numerator and denominator of our fraction. I'm going to use the randomization command non-zero differans because I don't want b to be equal to 0, and actually I don't really want a to be equal to 0 either because then my fraction would just be 0. And differans because I want something that won't just reduce to 1. I'll input my minimum and maximum values and then put a 2 to indicate that I'm creating two random variables. And that would set me up to have my numerator and denominator, which we can now put into a fraction format. Or I could add one additional piece of information. In a set of single quotes, I could include I and C for increasing. The result then, if A is in the numerator, would be a proper fraction, or DEC, and then I would know that I would have an improper fraction. So it just depends if we want that additional control on the final resulting fraction. Next, what we'll do is actually create the fraction. In this case, we're going to create a fraction that we can't use for calculations. All we can do with this next command is use this for display. So we'll call this fraction 1. And to create that, we'll say make reduced fraction variable a, comma variable b. So now, in the question text, if we just listed this information out to see what it looks like, we're generating a value a value b, and the reduced fraction 6/4, which would be 3/2. Again, with what we set up so far, we can't perform any calculations with 3/2. That's just for display purposes to show that fraction in a problem. If we want those reduced values, though, there is a way to get them. We could create two new variables, c and d, and set that equal to make reduced fraction a comma b, and then in a set of single quotes, we'll type the word parts. What that's going to do is assign the reduced numerator and denominator now to these values c and d. And in this case, we ended up with 10 divided by -10, so that reduces to -1. So our value for value for c, the numerator of that fraction, is -1, and d is +1. If we look at a different pair of values, in this case, that doesn't reduce except for the negative sign. But here we started off with 10 and -6. That reduces to -5/3, and we have that new reduced numerator and new reduced denominator that we can use for calculations. Another method for generating a fraction is to create, let's do a new variable here, e. We'll create a new variable, e, which is a non-zero real rand between -10 and 10 by a step of 0.25. So now what we're doing is creating a real number, somewhere between -10 and 10, with steps of 0.25, so we're creating a decimal number, potentially. And then we can use the command, or we can create a new variable f, and assign that to be equal to decimal to fraction, and that variable e. So we're generating a real number, that's variable e, and then variable f will be that result converted to a fraction. So in this case, we got the variables, or the value 0.25 converted to a fraction as 1/4. Again, this value of 1/4, this variable f, we can't use that for calculations, but we can use that for display purposes or answer purposes if we want students to enter their answer as a fraction. There are some additional options that we can include with this decimal to fraction command. One is to change the format to mixed number, which would mean that instead of giving us an improper fraction, the result would be, oh, I did something wrong here. Let's see. So I don't actually want that format equals, that was in my notes, but I shouldn't include that. So we're going to use the decimal to fraction command, the variable that we want to convert, and then after a comma, in a set of quotation marks, mixed number as a command. And what this will do is take a value like in this case 7.75, and instead of converting that to an improper fraction, we'll keep it as a mixed number. So with a lot of these commands, we just have additional options and things that we can include for purposes like this if we were dealing with mixed numbers instead of improper fractions, all to get at whatever result or outcome you're trying to get students to investigate and be assessed on.